ended up swinging this back over to the Simple Growth page for the SA Weekly Talk Show. And just a crazy week with everything going on with COVID-19. Our guest, Stephanie Ilya, was going to go over some payroll protection and different accounting features. She'll be joining us on a later episode, but last minute she could not make it. So I'm going to go in and actually run the show solo today. But as I thought, with things going on relevant to the service industry, especially Service Autopilot V3, their version 3, is on the minds of most people using the software or looking at the software. So what I thought I would do today on the SA Weekly Talk Show is answer some questions live and go in and give you a brief overview of some of the best workflow practices that we would recommend in Release 1 and Release 2 of version 3. Now, the final release, R3, is going to be later in the year from what we're hearing, July or August. Don't have a final date on that. And then in addition to that, we are going to tentatively have Jonathan Patoshnik of The Lawn Care Millionaire and co-founder of Service Autopilot live right here on the SA Weekly Talk Show next Friday afternoon. So as always, we're trying to bring value for the Service Autopilot community and the service industry as a whole. So what I'm going to do is hop on my other screen and open this up and dive into V3 and give you some of the latest things the Simple Growth team has discovered in V3 as far as best workflow. And one of the things that we found is in our mission to help individuals, especially service business owners, take their life back from their business, that if we concentrate just on software features and functions, we're kind of missing the boat. So what we like to do is train an actual streamlined workflow to the software, how you and I are using it in the trenches in our service business. So we're not going to concentrate on just in the new features, but how do we integrate those new features in a standardized workflow to optimize our day-to-day operations of V3. So without any further delay, I am running the technology end of this and the presenting angle. So we're hang in there with me, but in the comments here of the actual show, and if you are watching or listening to the Simple Growth SA Weekly Talk Show on the podcast, it will be in the notes, but we've just posted in the Facebook Live link the Learning Hub link. So everything you're seeing here, we've got probably close to 100 videos already built out for streamlined workflow training that you can log in free of no charge into the Simple Growth Learning Hub. And what we use to train our clients and our internal employees, you will now have access to that if you click in the messenger notes and sign up for that. So without any further delay, I'm going to bump this out in the stream here and show you what we're talking about here. So right now, this is the new look and feel of version 3 Service Autopilot. And as we're in here, you can notice obviously the client or lead screen is a little bit different. So the first thing we really want to look at here is the difference of a client and a lead. So there is no longer under that green plus icon a lead or a client. They are now an account. And when we dial into the actual client, it's a green little button here on the actual client screen. It says active. It's actually an orange little avatar, and we'll get into that. Or on the lead, it will actually say lead. So those are your visual clues as we're diving in. So one of the biggest questions when release number 2 came out, if you're following the Simple Growth workflow from version 2, is how do we get a new lead into the system? So we're going to go into that green avatar here, or the green button, and hit add an account. So we don't have the ability to add a lead or a client on this. They've consolidated it. And I'll be honest, at first, I wasn't exactly sure what the SA development team was trying to get at. But after we looked at it, it makes logical sense. And I actually really like this new feature that they've built out. So you can enter in a client here, and that's defaulted, or a lead. Now, a client right here is going to be most people's go-to, or at least their temptation. And what I'm suggesting is do not enter them in a client unless they are actually a client, because we want to be able to get in there and track the data of lead acquisition, estimating, and then conversion into a client or a closed out lead. So that is going to be foundation. The first thing of workflow training in V3 is we want to go in and add a lead when it's actually a lead. Now, what you're going to notice is this is a little bit different, and this is what took me by surprise. So if your account, this is obviously a test account, has a tax account, we want to select the tax, which makes sense because if it's a non-for-profit or a taxable account, we want to make sure we're good right from day one. Now, name on invoice, I'm going to recommend we don't even fill this out. What I'm going to do is type in the first name. So logically, we're picking up the phone and we're saying, hey, it's Mike from Callahan's. How can I help you? Oh, okay, cool. What's your name? Oh, it's Mike. Perfect. So what we're going to do is go in and hit save. And the next step is free on the Service Autopilot Marketplace. We have built out a form. So instead of going to the A for Auto Assist in V2, now in V3, we're going to go out and fill this form on the left column where they've consolidated and cleaned this up. Now, as an account overview here, we've seen the status as a lead. So that is our visual clue. Instead of V2, that long gray bar signifying an estimate being the lead, now we can go in and see that. Now, the idea is, so we've gotten their name, selected the sales tax if that's applicable in your area, and we want to go in and fill out a form. And what we're going to do is go into and fill out the appropriate form. So we have several different forms in here we've built out, but I'm going to first show you the SG phone intake form, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, this form right here, with and without an automation, is free on the Service Autopilot Marketplace. So if you're a Service Autopilot member and you have access to the Marketplace, you can download this form and work right along with me if you're watching the recorded version. But the idea here is we're going to take this form, and the first name now is automatically loaded in, and I'm going to continue to pump in the information as I go in. So now we've got first name, last name. We're going to grab the service address. We're going to put everything mapped to the cell phone. So when in default, we always train to go to the cell phone because automations and two-way texting are going to tie into that. If it's not a cell phone, we put it in the cell phone field. It's not going to hurt you, but it's going to give you more granularity. Next thing is we'd suggest is, hey, how did you hear about us? So another interesting thing on V3 as you're working this form, if you're listening to live on Facebook Live here, or even on the recorded podcast that we're now on iTunes and Spotify and all the other major channels, if you search for Simple Growth, all one word, you can find the podcast. But as we're looking at it, the cool thing at V3 Forms is it automatically populates your lead sources by default from the company settings. Now, V2 did not do that. This does. Now it's going to automatically track that. So I'm going to say they saw our company truck. And we're going to put an estimate in here for, so I'll say it is for lawn mowing. And special instructions. Fence gate code is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the idea is this is going to populate a to-do. If you download the free automation form and the non-automation form, it wouldn't do anything. But this is going to actually create a to-do for these tasks. Now, so what we're doing is just streamlining. We get their name, tax code, and then we drive a standardized form that allows the office staff or your virtual assistant to have standardized intake. And then office notes are office notes. So if you want office notes, instead of having to go in under the edit tab and add in these different areas or under advanced actions, all of it's now on one streamlined workflow. And if we're not doing the estimates online on the phone, we can click create here to do an estimate. And what that's going to do is create a to-do for someone with a deadline of, say, 12 or 24 hours to get that done. And then we'd hit submit. And now there is no double entry, but we've actually standardized that workflow in V3. And you'll notice after I click out of this now, that reloads and all the information is now in the contact information. And as we scroll down here, you'll notice that there is no information on the billing address. So that was done on purpose by SA to make sure you have good data in, good data out. So one of the things that we are going to be releasing in the marketplace shortly is the ability to not have double entry here, just like we had in V2. So this is a simple growth add-on to Service Autopilot. So if we went in to fill out the form, we have an additional form now that will be available to the public shortly. But basically, this is almost identical to the same exact form that we had before, but it automatically populates the billing address. So we'd go in and type in our service address. Now, billing address and email are the same as the service address and email. If they're not, we could go down and click and continue to the next step, and we would fill in the billing address. But if they are the same, what we would do then is click this, slide down, and hit next. And then the billing address now is automatically populated with no double entry, and then we would hit submit. And what the Simple Growth development team has done is created a process where it alleviates all the double entries. So now all that information that was blank is completely loaded in here. And we've eliminated that double entry, but we've created a standardized workflow of not functioning or featuring software features, but we're focusing on a workflow within the software of Service Autopilot. So hopefully that's advantageous. Any comments or questions, feel free to drop them live in the Facebook feed here as well. But that's the first thing we're looking at is we're going in and we are adding that account and driving that process. So as we search in here, the avatars up here as the little red little person with a red L is a lead, and the little black avatar here with the person without the L as a client. That has not changed. The visual representation of visual clues in the system are the same. So if I go in now and go back into our test client, we have, just like we had in V2, but now in V3, visually it's a lot cleaner. We have the audit trail of these forms. So we never really want to go back in and re-enter on those forms, but we really want to go in and create a new form if that's applicable. So the next thing that we're looking at here is how do we go in, and the next logical step if we're not doing an on-site estimate is how do we go out and actually do Maps Pro. So this little house icon now is actually where this lives. And as we go into it, it zooms in here on the satellite, and we can go in and zoom in. Now this is the test client you see in most of our accounts. So as we scroll down, there's nothing here. So we have to go up to the left-hand column of the Smart Maps now and hit Edit. And this is going to allow us to go in and do several things: property measurements, coordinates, property pictures, and property data. So what we're going to do is go into area measurements and zoom in. Now, the first thing you're going to notice, it's a little bit different, but the same. On the right-hand side, it's going to automatically default to a color. So we can select and customize that color for the area we're coloring. We can add, subtract, or exclude. And we're going to want to be able to name this. So I would say this is turf square footage. Same exact measuring. When you click, we go in here and drive around the house just as you did in V2. But V3 measuring tool is a little bit different. Right, as of right now, we don't have a street view or the ability to manipulate the map. Now, I haven't gotten word from SA if they're looking to open those features back up eventually in V3, or if that's something new that is only going to be there. So the idea is once you have this, we want to go to property data and map it to a custom field. So custom fields in version 3 now are a little bit different. You can assign it to the property, and you definitely need to make sure you assign it to whether it's a text, a list, or a number, because the forms and some of the stuff we're going to get into later are smart enough that they will not let you put a number in a text field or text in a number field. Where in V2, some of the times you're able to get away with that. And as I'm watching these live questions, Colin wants to know, do you still have to enter in email? Colin, I don't believe you need to, but best practice, you definitely do want to enter email when you enter that lead in. So what we're going to do is go in, and I'm going to grab the square footage of a 52-inch mower. So maybe we've defined our production rate for this mowing area for a 52-inch mower. And then maybe there is and we've got that in add. So I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to take these property measurements down here on the bottom. But let's go in and add some additional measurements. So I'd go back down to the bottom and hit add a measurement, and I'm going to fictitiously say there's a pool in the backyard here. Same idea as V2 if you've seen any of my videos on this, but you really want to go in and do that. And depending on the overlay, that color can be obvious or not obvious. So the more transparent the colors you pick, probably off the better for V3. So I'm just going to label this pool, but instead of adding the calculation, I'm hitting subtract. The same functionality where you had the 0, the plus icon, and the negative sign in the upper left-hand corner in version 2, they've consolidated this in all one streamlined area. And I'm going to associate this back to that 52-inch mower, just like we did below here, but I'm going to subtract it and hit OK. So now it's doing the math. So I've got a turf square footage of 9,100 square feet, but I've taken the pool out. So now the serviced area is 8,400 square feet. So these are some of the things that you're looking at in V3 that are just the same but different. I think the Service Autopilot's done a great job doing this. So you'll see something new here is the ability to add a pin. So what we can do is drop a pin on the actual property here. And you can see it right here. Hard to see the blue color. But you could say this is the backflow preventer if you're doing basically backflow work or irrigation work. And this is a great way to go in and actually see this. Now you can actually assign a form to this as well. So maybe we wanted to fill out a particular form if we're doing backflow inspection work, and that form could be assigned to that area in the property. So we would go in and already know where the backflow preventer is, so we're not walking around the house, and we could have that inspection form tied to that pin on there. So I'm not going to, for time's sake, save that, but that's one of the ideas you can use that for. Now, coordinates, we're going to go in and it gives us the latitude, longitude. Where that's being based off of is this red little dial that's going to be popped right on top of the house here. So you can actually drag and drop this if it's not on the right house or it's inappropriate. So we're going to cancel that because that's probably the right spot for that house. Now, under coordinates, we can add a photo. So by clicking on this, you can go in and actually take a picture of the actual property and stick it in there. So the idea here is we want to be able to upload a picture of the house. And I'm just going to take a picture of this button just so you can see the idea of what happens. But you can also do it from the new team app here. So that would be fictitiously the picture of the house. And then the next thing is under property data on the far left-hand side. When we click into that, these are all your custom fields and values that could go along with property data. So that gives you a real clean look all in one page, how to update these as well. The next thing is we're going to go down to the bottom here and save the property. So first thing, we're hitting that green plus icon. We're adding an account instead of a lead or client. We're entering just their name in. We're going to the simple growth phone intake form, and we're working a standardized intake. Whether you have an automation or no automation, that'll work. And then version 2 of that will be coming out later next week, where it automatically populates the billing address so there's no double entry by your team. Next thing that we're looking at here is once we have that estimate, can we actually go out and create an estimate? So we're going to go into that as well, and scheduling. So when we go in here, and I don't know if we have this on here, so I'm just going to check. We may. We did take our on-site estimate form and turn it into a V3 form for the team app, and it does not look like we have it in this video. But if you've ever seen our on-site estimate form where we're entering in number of small, medium, and large shrubs, linear length of landscape bed, all the different variables we can't measure online, we fill that out and those fields automatically populate in the estimate. So the next step is we're going to go in and add an estimate. That's on the left-hand side there. And as we're adding this estimate, the estimate as of right now in release number 2 in V3 are pretty much identical here. So we're going to go in, we're going to grab a template, all the information loads, and if you've got pricing matrices on the back end, you have a price, a budget, time, and cost. So you'd go in, you would grab your template, hit apply, and all your services would load. And if we had the custom fields appropriate to these, it would automatically load the price, budgeted, time, and cost. Then you would scroll down, hit save, close them on the phone, or email that out. So that workflow process is going to be the same right now from version 2 to version 3. I believe in release 3, some of this will be changing. But now the next thing is that when we go back into this client screen here, we're going to go out and at this point, we probably have won the job. So I'm going to go through the different ways of scheduling a job in V3 because they are not significantly different, but the visual clues of them and how you do it is a little bit different. So this lead here needs to be converted into a client. And once again, I said when we add a lead into the system, we really want to create a lead, go through the estimate, win it, and then convert them into a client. So what we're doing here is under the Advanced tab, we can get the account statement. We can send or receive text messages for the message center. We can mark them as lost. So if we've lost the estimate, we want to close them out. So we can have a clean database of how many people are in the system that can convert into clients. And then the next thing is we want to go and actually now convert this lead because fictitious, now we've won that estimate. And what it's going to do is go in, pull up some of the information. If there's certain things missing, you'll have this little red triangle. When you click on it, it's going to say, hey, we don't have a property name. So we're going to put that in here. And it looks like invoice preferences was not selected. So we can go in and put name on invoice. So it's great because it makes sure you've got good data in to have good data out. So when you go to send out those invoices or do those different reports, all the key things you need are in here. So really great job by the SA development team here. And we can set it just like we did before to review the estimates as well, or override our monthly default. If we were billing monthly and we wanted to set the lawn mowing invoices weekly, we could do that. So this is how we'd override it. Once we're done, we save that client. Now this lead becomes a client. And it looks like I did something wrong here, so let me just refresh this and pull up a client so I have an example. So once we're back in the client screen here, that should be coming up in here in a second, we will be able to see the new workflow as far as creating a new job in V3. So if any comments or questions, feel free to drop them here in the live version of the Facebook Live here. Or if you're watching our podcast or listening to our podcast, feel free to make some comments and questions in the show notes. We're going to be monitoring those as well. Right now, as we're diving in here, the internet at the house is a tad bit slow. So let me just try to log back out. And hopefully I didn't lose the Facebook Live at the same time here. So let me log back in here and see if I can get this back up and running. All right, perfect. So by going to CRM clients, you can default it back to V3. We're going to pull up our test client and then dive right back in, hopefully, to the scheduling of that job in the V3 methodology. So let's see, hopefully the internet here is playing along and we can get this back up and running for you. So obviously I've clicked something here they don't like, so let me pull this back up and see if I can't get this going again for us. All right, and let me share my screen back out. All right, one last try here. I know internet in my basement office with COVID is a little bit crazy, and we've lost a few go-to-meetings as well. So let me just try to pop into our client here once this loads, and we'll go in and show you how to actually schedule through V3. And then some other things I want to dive into as well with forms to see if we can't do that. So I'm thinking about possibly jumping on my other Wi-Fi here just to see if I get the internet going, but hang in there for a sec to see if I can't get this to go. And then if not, we will come back with an additional SA Weekly later today when the internet's better at the house here to get you going. Okay, so here we go. It's starting to load back in. And we've got our test client. So what you really want to do is go off to the left-hand side here and go to schedule a job. And when we go to schedule a job, it's going to be, like I said in V2, it's similar, but it looks different. So what we're doing here is going in and selecting their one-time job. So one-time job is going to be your traditional one-time job. You know the day it's going to happen, or we're going into a waiting list job scenario. So a waiting list job could be maybe a spring cleanup in the spring that maybe has to be done this month, but doesn't have to be done today. Or if you're in the home cleaning industry, maybe it is a move out or move in clean that needs to be done, but it doesn't have to be done on a certain day, but it has to be done within the week. So it gives you that flexibility. So the idea is we click into that one-time job, it automatically defaults one time here, and we're going to go in and select the actual service now. So there's a couple things here that you can notice is it will go to default. Let me see if I have an example based on some estimates that we may have done here. So the purple part here is based on the matrices, so based on the square footage that comes out. Or if you have an estimate already built, it would be defaulted in, say, estimate in the light blue. So it pulls up that, and you know if it's 0, obviously you need to figure that out. But if you've got a matrices that pulls off that custom field, you're in good shape. So I'm going to pull this 2450 off one of our practice matrices and just load that in. So now it's going to load in that price and budgeted time and cost if that was all connected. So put that in and just say it's 0.15 man hours, and that is the information that we need. Now we can add additional line items. So under advanced, it gives you a couple different areas. So if you're doing chemical tracking for treated areas, it actually gives you the ability to go in and select the area that you're treating, which is pretty cool. And we can override the salesperson, the date sold, the account manager, or the source. So if the source for this particular sale was different than the original lead acquisition, you can override it. But if this account had a lead source on it, it would automatically have been defaulted. So under advanced, those are some of the options. When we go to hit next, do you know when this job will start? Well, that would obviously be yes, because it's a one-time job. And that's the definition of a one-time job when we go to schedule. We know the one-time job's date. Do you want to assign it? No or yes. A yes gives the ability to pick your crew, and based on the estimated team size on the scheduling team settings, it automatically pulls that in. Now under the advanced area here, we have a couple other options, especially for fertilizing or something with a gate. Do you want to call ahead? And it defaults the include days and maximum hours per day. So if it's not a one-time job, as we talked about earlier, we can actually go in and create this as a waiting list job. Once again, there's a predefined end and start date, and we can do it anywhere in between. So if we say we don't know when it's going to start, then it opens it up for the start and end date of completion. So let's just say we need to do this in the next 7 days. That opens up that gap and gives you a waiting list job. So as we go in and hit the next button, we're driving into the billing information. So the invoice description is lawn mowing, that's pulled off the service, and billing preferences, once again, can be overridden on this one service as well. So under advanced, it gives you the ability for the work order number, PO, and to do a separate invoice as well if you needed to just invoice that service separately. So these are some of the granularities that have been built upon V3 in Service Autopilot that I, for one, am quite impressed with what they've got going here on this product. So next thing is, do you want to view your job? You can hit yes, and it's going to pull up, if it was a reoccurring job, the future visits list. So the next thing we're kind of thinking about here is, well, if it's not a one-time job and it's not a waiting list job, where are we going from there? So as you can see, they call them overlays, but if you click out of the upper right-hand corner, it pulls that overlay out and you get into the main screen behind it again. So they kind of layer on top of each other. And actually, let me show this in the screen here. So Colin said you can't see the actual screen. So real quick, I'm going to dive through that one-time and waiting list job again. So thank you, Colin, for saying that. So we're going to go over to the left-hand side here and hit schedule a job. And we're going to go into the job type. So once again, that one-time job, either waiting list or one-time, we'd click into it. That's going to show the job. And we can go in and type in our services. So that default is a default service, but if I go into that lawn mowing example, it's going to pull up potentially here something that looks to the fact of a matrix. So if it was a matrixly driven price, we've got a price here, Or if it was in blue, it would actually pull it in as an actual estimate. If it's an estimate, it actually pulls the price in directly. So I'm going to put that in for $51 and a budgeted hours of 1 hour. And drive that down. Now, under the advanced line here on the one-time job or the waiting list job, it is going to give us some options of chemical tracking and some other things that are treated. So we can go in and select that. We can override our salesperson, date sold, account manager, and source. If this already had a source, it would automatically load. Or if you've forgotten to do it, that's a good reminder. So as you go to next, we're going to go into scheduling assign. And I added an extra service there by mistake. So it's not allowing me to go to the next step and have all the data is in there. So do you know when this job will start? Yes, that's the definition of a one-time job. So I'm going to put today's date, and you want to assign the crew. So I'll hit yes, and now that gives me the drop down of all my crews. And based on that crew's assignment, it's updating that crew assignment to the estimated team size of 3. So now that we have that, we can go into the advanced areas and select if we need a call ahead, and it defaults the minimum hours and multi-day jobs in there as well. So it gives you a little more granularity. Next thing we're going to hit is next, and that's going to go into our billing detail. So whatever our invoice description was on the service itself, same as V2, will automatically merge. You can override it if you want. And how will you invoice? Monthly is the default to this test client, but you could go in and override that for this particular service. Now, under advanced, we can separate this job from other invoices generated automatically in the system, and we can work our work orders and purchase order numbers here as well. So next thing is we go to hit finish. That's going to drive us in and allow us to preview, if it was a reoccurring job, the upcoming schedule and future visits. Now, obviously, this is a one-time job. So that is how we're driving that process here. When we click the upper X, it pulls this, they call it an overlay out, and it opens that back up. Now, if we go back into scheduled jobs, the only difference here between a one-time job with a specific date and a waiting list job is when we go in here, things will change a little bit. So if I go in and put that same lawn mowing job in there, it's going to go in and change on the second tab of scheduling. So we've got our lawn mowing. I'm going to put our price in here. And I'm going to go to next. And the scheduling assigned is, do you know when the job will start? Well, if I say no, that opens up that granularity to create that waiting list job in V3. So we streamline basically 4 types of scheduling into 2 options. So that's how we tackle that. Everything else from that point on is the same. If we go back in and just schedule a job, there's 2 other types of jobs here that are going to be able to be done. Repeats or package jobs. So a repeat job with your weekly or biweekly mowing or cleaning. Package jobs are basically a waiting list job built in several rounds that are happening. So fertilizing is a good example. We have 5 different rounds in a month of time each one. Or bed maintenance. Maybe we have a 2-week period each month that we need to do that bed maintenance, but it doesn't need to be done on a specific day based on how we're there. So the idea is we go in and hit repeats. That automatically defaults in. Same exact process. We go in and select that service. And we click that, and we're going to put that lawn mowing in here. But instead of a one-time job, we're going to build it out as a repeating job, but not a package. And same options under advanced are here, wide open. Next is a little bit different, is which repeating schedules. We've got our master packages or master schedules, I'm sorry. So we got our weekly or bi-weekly reoccurring. Just like in V2, we have our custom schedule where you can pop that out and say it's going to repeat. Let's say it's going to repeat every 3 weeks, which isn't an option in the master schedules I had. And I'm going to say it repeats every 3 weeks on a Monday. So by doing so, that is setting up that reoccurring job, and it gives you some really custom granularity there. So if people are doing, let's just say, commercial cleaning, we could say repeats every 1 day, and we can go in and customize that. And when will the job start? So we can select when it starts. So there's some granularity there is a little bit different for that waiting list job or the reoccurring job there. So same exact things in advance. We're opening up. Do we need a call ahead? And the hours there. We go into next. And we can override here. We hit finish and we could preview the upcoming job. So for time's sake, obviously I'm not going to do that. But you get the idea. So now we've got the ability to add in an account, not our leader client. So we click in there. We use the Simple Growth onboarding phone intake form. We get all the information, no double entry in the billing area. Then we're going in to schedule that job. So that's there. Now, kind of wrapping it up here in the top of the hour as far as the SA Weekly Talk Show is we might want to go in and take a look at accounting or forms. So I would say that probably the next applicable thing is the V3 forms, and I will save the accounting for a later show. But the accounting is really cool because it's a lot of the same features, and it looks just a little bit cleaner, but you can filter down and still with 3 clicks a button, email your credit or email the invoices, run your credit cards or print them out. And it gives you the ability to filter down and save some views. So it's pretty cool. Main thing is here, if we go to add a form with the V3, one thing that we've realized at Simple Growth is a lot of folks were thinking that version 2 forms would automatically convert into version 3. So that's something that we have not seen as an ability. So a lot of folks are reaching out to Simple Growth as a certified advisor. So if you don't have the time or the bandwidth to do that, let us know. That is a service that as of lately we've just opened up to help people convert where they're paying us to convert V2 forms to V3 forms. We test them and train you how to use them. Anybody using the Simple Growth automations, far as like sales level 1, 2, and 3, your estimate request form, we are in the process of just finalizing going out and creating those in V3 at no extra cost for you. So that's usually a big question. But we didn't want to do it immediately. We wanted to make sure that we were comfortable with the system and how it worked before we actually went out and did that. So next thing here is you've got a couple different templates here. I'm going to go right from the blank form here and just give you some brief overview of the way this is set up. So very similar to the V2 forms, you can go in and put a header in and click into it. And when you click into this gray box, it will actually start typing here on the screen. So the next thing is we're going to probably, and you can have that label on or off. Obviously, you'd want it on. And under fields, we're probably going to go in and add some advanced fields first. So we want to go with name, address, and it's going to ask you, do you want billing service address, or I'll decide later. Right here, you're probably going to want to go service address for best practice. Add that, and then we will probably want to go phone, and we're going to want to go with cell phone as always, so we have that extra functionality with texting and everything else we want to do. And then we want to go in and grab our email, and that's going to be our contact email, not our billing address. So now that we have these, very similar to version 2, we click in here to go in. Now we can change the label, which is this area here, and then the description in the placeholder text. So you could say, enter name here. That fills that in. So first name, as you go in, it is a required field on or off. That's a little asterisk here. And field mapping already now defaults back in. So originally in version 2, you had to map it back. Now it's mapped to the correct place, so you don't have that error. Then we're going into last name. We can require it. And field mapping already maps back to last name. So they've got you covered there so you don't have those issues. Now, next thing we're going to go into service address. Under advanced, there's a thing called CSS. Now, what that is the ability to style this. So if you have a web person, they can go in and customize it, make the form look how they want, stack the different columns and make it look the way you want. So that is something advanced we're not going to get into, but that is a great feature if somebody that you have has that capability. So as we go into service address line, once again, it's mapped perfectly for us, and we can require it or not require it. So I'm going to require that, and then I'm going into city, service city, and we're going to require that as well. You've got your drop down for state. I want to require that. postal code. Cell phone number now is mapped to cell phone, so that's good. And we've got our contact email, and that's merged back perfectly. So now you've got all these the main information. So we can go into add fields and do some things like a divider, page break. And now if we were doing maybe an on-site estimate form, we could go in and create different custom fields. So if we clicked on number, scroll back up, this number here is this number here. So I could say turf square footage for a 52-inch mower. Then we could potentially get rid of that here, consolidate it, and go to field mapping and custom field or text. Now it's obviously going to be a number because we're doing math off that field. And we're going to go in and select the 52-inch mower that was our custom field. And that's going to drive it into our pricing matrices. So those are the main things we can go in there. Now we can add, just like V2, we can add in short text, long text, or numbers. There's some other options for multiple choice, checkbox, ratings, reviews, hidden fields that are not visible, and some widgets as far as an image, giving the consumer the ability to upload an attachment, YouTube and Wisty videos embedded inside it. So you no longer have to embed the iframe. You've got that ability in the form itself. So once you have that, we can go in and click edit, and that's going to drive this. And when we go into rules, we can go in and add some functionality here. So let me add in a checklist. And when I go into edit, it's going to give me the ability to field map custom field text and drive into it. So this is how we can go in depending on the functionality here. We can go in under rules, and based on that, we can add a rule of if it contains one or more or contains none, and we could select them if they were in there, and then we can add a tag or jump to a page or remove a tag. So that gives you that if-else logic there. So without spending a few hours in here, that is a great functionality that SA is built into this. Now, the next thing is we'd go in, once we have this form, we can add pages right here as well if we want on the bottom left. We go to next, and it's going to give you the confirmation. So whether you want a document, a simple landing page thank you, or to redirect to a URL of a website. Email notifications, we can send it to certain people in our organization. And we can go in and update some different things here as far as account matching and duplicate counting. So, and then we can do our tag setting, tags on click, remove tags on click. So these were almost the same options in V2 that are in V3, and then tags on submit is also going to give you the different options there. So once that's set the way you want, we would go to next, and that's going to go in and get you into the publishing options. So what you're going to see is some of the things I left wide open, it says I must fix them. And then some of them are suggested. So the system goes through and sweeps and scans the form to make sure that it is set up correctly and it's going to work for its basic functionality before you publish it. And then under that, you've got some form options. So where will this be published? Your website, mobile office, or mobile and office. So that's going to give us the flexibility to have a lead request for the website, just mobile only, office only, or mobile and office. That would be your on-site estimate request. So you have the functionality of having your laptop in the car or estimate truck, or walking around the home or house when you're doing that estimate. So on a real high level, those are some of the things that I see as game changers in V3. SA Weekly Talk Show or Callahan's Corner will be coming back with some more in-depth breakdown of V3, but hopefully that was helpful. And once again, we'll see you next week on the SA Weekly Talk Show with co-host Cody Owen back and Service Autopilot co-owner Jonathan Potoshnik and of the Lawn Care Millionaires. So if you have any questions for Jonathan or the SA team, make sure you submit them over on the Simple Growth page or the SA Weekly Talk Show Facebook page, and we'll be happy to answer those. And then watch out, we will be announcing a special giveaway for people that download the SA Weekly Talk Show podcast, now live on Spotify and iTunes. If you search Simple Growth, one word, the SA Weekly Talk Show coming at you at noon East or noon Central, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern, will be live on iTunes and Spotify, usually within 24 hours of the Facebook Live viewing. So we'll see you again next week with co-founder of Service Autopilot and Jonathan and of the Lawn Care Millionaire, Jonathan Petroshnik, and my co-host Cody Owen will be back again next week. So we'll see you then.